Hello and welcome back to Vinyl Safari. My name is Sean Patterson. In today's episode, I am speaking with one of my best friends, Mr. Lucas Silver. Lucas is a writer, poet, and music enthusiast, and he has introduced me single-handedly to more music that I now love and cherish than almost any other person I know. One of those artists is Bon Iver. And that will be the subject matter of this episode, plus one more at some point soon, because we just couldn't squeeze it all into this one. So, we did a deep dive into the first two Bon Iver records. They are For Emma, Forever Ago, and self-titled Bon Iver. And we had a great time. But anyway, I've already gone on too long for this intro. So, if you like what you hear, please consider giving us a rating, a comment, a like, a follow, a subscribe, whatever it is you can do on the platform you're listening to. It really makes a big difference, and it will help to grow Vinyl Safari. So, hope you enjoy. Hello, Lucas.
Hey, Sean.
How's it going?
Pretty good.
Yeah. My name is Sean, obviously. I'm here with my best buddy, Lucas, and Lucas is here because he introduced me for the first time to Bon Iver.
Did I? Huh.
Ages and ages ago. Did you not know that?
I didn't know. No.
Yeah, first time I heard Bon Iver was at your place in Sydenham.
Cool.
Yeah. Do you want to give yourself a quick introduction, or just sort of what you're into, what you do?
Yeah, I'm a writer. I get paid to be a legal writer, but I wish I got paid to write creatively.
You're a writer is the most important part.
Yeah.
I've read a lot of your writing. It's quite excellent.
Thanks,
don't
Sean.
sell yourself short here.
I wasn't. Just stating facts. I love music. I've loved Bon Iver since high school. Apparently, I've introduced Sean to Justin Vernon and his crew.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like introducing myself. I'm always
That's
bad
okay.
at it.
I know. I put you on the spot.
Yeah.
That's all good. Yeah. So basically, obviously, we're in what is now sort of the second series of Vinyl Safari. We're doing it a little bit less interview heavy and a little bit more loose and conversational. We are here in person at my basement in Kingston, Ontario, and we're just gonna have a chat about Bon Iver, and I mean, it might be weird to people who are listening who've listened to the previous series, but Bon Iver is a big part of my life, and I think even a bigger part of yours, and as far as our musical influences go. And we've spent so much time just listening to this genius and group of geniuses make some of the best indie music of the last decade and a half. And I think we get into deep discussions about all of this stuff all the time. And I thought it would just be good to kind of like get some of these thoughts out on the record and see if we can discover anything together, and just go through our thoughts.
So let's jump in.
Yeah. So let's listen to a song just to kind of whet the palate, as it were, and then we will go on from there. We're not going to cover everything, obviously. We might have to do a couple of these, but we'll start here and we'll see where it goes. So we're going to start off with Lump Sum.
Nice. Good timing.
I'm glad I caught that on record. Okay, so we had a good chat in that song real quick.
Something
so
about
where did we start?
As soon as Justin starts singing, we just can't stop talking.
I know. There was some gushing happening there. I think that's a good place to start, though, because For Emma is a mixed bag. I mean, all of the albums are mixed bags in terms of style and feel and things and emotion. But Lump Sum has a decent amount of sort of everything as far as early Bon Iver goes. The driving acoustic guitar we were saying, is kind of like the core rhythmic and tonal instrument in the entire song.
And it contrasts really nicely with the sort of lazy, almost out of time vocal phrases. Like the phrasing of the lyrics is so...
They're very erratic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure erratic is quite the right word.
Well, they're just not that predictable, I guess.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And it's like they're kind of just like haphazardly tossed over the rhythm of the song. And it's like ghostly. I mean, the layered vocals helps with that ghostly feel, but
It almost gives you the sense as if like the lyrics were written and then he decided to start singing them over the music. And I don't know if that is necessarily the way he works. I have no idea. It's something that interests me about every artist, is whether they're lyrics first or music first, or if it's kind of all the same. But the way a lot of his lyrics and melodies translate to me is almost like a stream of consciousness of ideas and concepts that get fed into a musical idea.
Yeah, and it's almost like the song itself kind of becomes like a crucible for the ideas in the that are presented in the lyrics. And I can imagine them getting crunched down and like forced into something that sometimes it ends up creating lyrics that are almost impossible to understand.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the lyrics become understandable only in like, this is a bad analogy, but you know how people say LaCroix or La Croix, the water, how it's like they just cut a grapefruit next to it and that's how they flavored it. It's almost like it's almost like with Justin Vernon writing lyrics, it's like he just like thought about the meaning while he was writing it, like or he just, I don't know, how do I can't say this right. The meaning is almost like it just emerges out of random words that he's strung together, and
I know
and crushing it into the structure of a song kind of helps that meaning. I don't know, it's like faceting a gemstone.
It's like unguided, essentially, but out of the expression, there's like an emergent theme and an emergent feeling that kind of encapsulates the song.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? Oh God, I've forgotten. It was about the whole like. Well, I'm just gonna stop it there. I'll edit this mumbling out. But coming back to what we were talked about while we were listening, we had an interesting point about the driving kind of four to the floor kick drum and the way it almost has like a dance feel to it.
Totally.
Like you don't hear that kind of thing in most indie music and I mean pop music to a large degree, but the kind of folk roots that Bon Iver is kind of drawing from and often sort of put into that box, you don't hear stuff like that.
Not
like,
really. No.
It's and you notice it a lot, as you said, when they play live. It has almost more of a sort of a disco.
Yeah,
they can
really turn it up, and you know, I mean, they've got all their synthesizers and everything spread out on the stage when they're playing, and they can really up the effects. But that four to the floor kick adds to that in a way that like I wanted to get up and start dancing when we saw him live.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, absolutely.
With that, and yet it never lost its like roots in like classic, you know, a 4-piece band kind of rock band feel. Like it still had that grittiness and yet there was that polished danciness that is almost EDM or disco. Yeah, really
blew
cool.
my mind. We should mention this, that we Lucas and I went to see Bon Iver in October of 2019,
right
which
before
was the last show.
lockdowns.
It was the last show I saw before the whole incident.
Yeah, the lost years.
Yeah, and I maintain. I mean, yeah. Even if that didn't happen, I think it would have to be probably one of the top 3 shows I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, yeah.
It was something else.
It was insane.
It was 6 people on stage. Now, obviously, they have a very extensive and incredibly skilled crew who helps them to achieve all of this. I mean, they invented their own lights, like for this tour that they were on. This is for the I, tour. But just the fact that all of this music was coming from 6 people on stage. They all had synthesizers. Almost all of them had some kind of percussion. They all had guitars and other instruments. Like it wasn't like, here's your drummer, here's your bassist, here's your they were all doing everything.
Yeah, even like they have 2 drummers, and both drummers also had like 3 synths set up around their kit, and they would like alternate. Sometimes they'd just be hitting the kick but like doing a pad on the synth while the other guy's doing the groove, and then they'd swap.
None of them were idle at any point. And even if it well, I guess you could make Creeks, probably they went to take a
they all went
and
pee
have a glass of water, but that's a different thing. But yeah, it was an incredible thing to witness and listen to, and it kind of changed my mind. Well, my mind wasn't made up necessarily on this stuff, but it changed my mind on what a live performance can be in terms of its relationship to technology.
Totally.
And you know,
that's the thing. Like if you told somebody, hey, like come with me to see this sick folk band, it's going to be a great show, and you take them to that show, they'd be like, what kind of prank is this?
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
not folk. Like it was not a folk show in any way. You know, and that actually reminds me to circle back to the 4 on the Floor Kicks. There's maybe one type of folk song that would have that, and it's like the Yahé folk song, you know?
I guess so. Or like a classic like Irish pub song, you know, like
Well, and I mean Mumford and Sons kind of does that sort of thing. Like especially on Sigh No More, Mumford and Sons does sort of the driving kick, but it's a totally different feel.
And that emerged at pretty much the same time. Like it was something later. But it was something of a new folk movement. Yeah. That happened in
I would venture to say
2000s.
kickstarted by Bon Iver.
Yes, for sure, because For Emma was 2008, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But largely written in 2007, which blows my mind because in 2007 I was
14,
being emo and listening to My Chemical Romance and thinking that I knew better than everybody else in the world. So,
oh, you don't think that anymore?
Oh God, no. But the fact that Justin Vernon was in a cabin in rural Wisconsin doing this.
Yeah, I mean the mythology. We had to touch on it, right?
We have to.
But I have he's in this watching interviews with him and stuff. I feel like he's super resistant to that, and I think part of it is because he may have also been in that mindset that you just described, where he is like a very ego-driven mindset of, you know, like, for those who don't know, he broke up with a long-term girlfriend, got kicked out of his band.
He was touring and very active before that in music, and in various bands. So he was trying really hard to do like the music thing.
Totally. And it just obviously it all crumbled around him. And he went to his grandfather's cabin, I think, in northern Wisconsin, and went up there just to kind of do nothing. And then while he was there, he got addicted to online gambling, and then he got like double pneumonia or something stupid like that.
Yeah.
And almost died. And out of that, however, came a lot of experimentation, musical experimentation. He picked up like an old shitty guitar from somebody on Craigslist or something, like a Japanese Sears guitar or something.
Yeah, it was one of those Sears like 60s like catalog guitars.
Yeah. And ended up recording For Emma, and it was an instant
Supposedly
classic.
He had 1 or 2 SM57 microphones, which we have here actually. It's a shame in a way that we're not using it for one of us, but it would be pointless for a podcast. But
yeah, fair.
I bought that mic for that reason. Yeah. Knowing that he recorded that entire album with one of those, I was like, I mean, first of all, it's a classic instrument mic anyway, but he did all of his vocals on that too. Like, it's one of the most versatile pieces of gear on the planet for $150, and you only have to look at or listen to that album to realize that like it has nothing to do with the price of your gear or how fancy your studio is.
But yeah, anyway, going back, like to go and seclude yourself from society after everything falls down, and to just sort of, it's kind of like it's almost like a pity party kind of moment, you know? And I can imagine
we romanticize that stuff like that.
Exactly.
Often.
Yeah, but if, you know, I think he's grown and matured since then. I mean, obviously it was almost 10 years ago. Well,
what do you mean almost 10 years ago?
More than
almost
10 years
20
ago.
years
almost,
ago.
Oh my God.
It was 17 years ago.
Okay. So yeah, he's probably matured a little bit.
So we're at the start of 2024. It was probably closer to 16, but
yeah,
we're splitting hairs anyway.
Anyway, I don't remember where I was going with this, but
the romanticism about the idea of going into
right. I guess it's just interesting that he seems so resistant to that, and especially to that in the light of like to the mythology and to like kind of romanticizing this experience that he had, especially in the light of, because in his later albums he's been really careful to acknowledge that he is not a singular entity that's behind all this music, right? Like,
I think that actually is part of the reason why he doesn't sort of lean into the whole folklore of the first album and everything is because the outgrowth of it has been such a positive thing for him and such an expansive thing for him as a musician and in his life generally. Like, I don't think it's necessarily that there's like real untruths to the original story of what happened there, but that he's grown past it and sees it as a part of his life that was a springboard, and it was lucky he got picked up by like
someone at EMI.
It was a
something,
blog essentially that picked him. Like, he's mentioned it actually by name in a couple of interviews, but like a blog basically picked up the album and said, hey, this is pretty cool, whatever this guy's doing, and then he has gone out of his way to credit them for that sort of
cool, yeah.
Boost that they gave him. But I think he sort of, I don't think it's necessarily like a downplaying or anything other than that
Just
he's done
shifting
so
focus
much
away.
since then and has worked so much with so many other people that to belabor the point of their like mythology and the starting point would just be tacky and disingenuous.
The irony of all this is that we're talking exclusively about him.
Yes. Well, but we are starting the podcast, right? We did just listen to Lumps on it. We have to start somewhere.
Yeah, I just always think about that, how it's like, you get around Bon Iver fans and they're always, one of the things that comes up, one of the talking points is like, oh yeah, but Bon Iver is not just one guy, you know, it's a whole group. And yet then everybody invariably just talks about Justin Vernon and how much of a genius he is. So it's like, you can't get away from it.
Yeah, there's the thing of like, you want to acknowledge the collective effort and the incredible people who like contribute to something like that. And also the fact that but for Justin Vernon, none of it would exist at all. So
that's right.
It's credit where it's due, you know,
right?
in all directions. You know, this is a good place to listen to another song.
Sure.
By the way, what are we drinking here?
I don't know,
Lucas.
Some kind of red wine.
Yes, it is. It's very very bougie. $11 red wine.
Here, let's do some ASMR.
Oh God, no. Let's have a cheers though. How about we start this off with a toast? A quick toast.
All right.
Let's start with Justin Vernon, because as we said, without him, we wouldn't be talking about this, and we'll get on to the rest of it soon.
Cheers
to Justin Vernon. Skål.
Oh, but introduce a song.
We didn't decide what we were going to listen to. Did you want to do Stacks?
Let's do Stacks.
All right.
Last track on From a Forever Ago.
This is a good place to transition, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Restacks. Check. We're back. Immediate thought right at the end of that. The sound quality of this whole album is remarkable for one man with a mic or two, a shitty guitar, couple of instruments, and what apparently it was Pro Tools LE or something. It was like a light version of Pro Tools. It was like GarageBand version of Pro Tools.
And a log cabin.
Yes. I mean, apparently it was
which are not known for being well insulated, I will say that.
Apparently he had a friend of his master it, which can make a big difference, but aside from that, like, it's incredibly well made for what it was. Mm-hmm. Like, there's this kind of album has no right to be as good as it is. It's that kind of thing for any person, really. Like, he said often that he made this record as an idea of like some demos that he might then go on to turn into a real project. He said, like, you know, I thought I was doing like a good job and I was getting these ideas down of like songs that I had for a while and felt good about, and you know, when I got back onto the road and things, and he was on the road as he was finishing mixing these, apparently with another band. I don't remember all the details, but it was like almost like an afterthought, like he was working on demos, and it turned out to be the record. It's just crazy to me that happened. It's the perfect story for anybody who is in the position of feeling like they don't have the means to properly express themselves.
Yeah.
But it's totally wrong. You can do it. You can do all of these things.
Totally.
If you just have.
I think a good lesson to take away from it is, like, don't overthink it, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Just make something. Just make something, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I wanted to touch on that I think that song exemplifies brilliantly is just the melodic content of what he sings, and the way that even the guitars, like that song is one of the most stripped down of all of the record. It's pretty. It is just guitar and vocals. There's probably a little bit of doubling and things, but it's pretty much just acoustic guitar and vocals. And I think he's strumming with his thumb. It's very. It's not tinny, the guitar. It's very mellow and warm, and he's hitting little sub melodies in the chords shapes that he's playing that give all that extra character in between the points where he's singing, and they kind of mirror the vocal melody as well. It's just brilliant writing.
Totally.
Like, really brilliant.
And like contrasting it with Lump Sum, you know, it's so much more intimate feeling without moving too far away thematically from that song or, you know, the rest of the album. It still fits, and yet it's a totally different vocal quality. Like, it's so intimate, it's so close. Yeah.
And it's the last song on the album. It's such a perfect way to bring it to a close and kind of wrap it up with a nice bow on the top. There's no bells and whistles. It's just, you've had this experience of listening to what is, I mean, you're listening to an experience, essentially.
Right.
The guy who isolates himself and is in a rough place and just has, I guess, the drive to create in some way or another. And that last song just brings it all to a fine point.
Yeah, and lyrically, it's a painful song, right? Like, it's haunting.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting place to end the album too, but it fits thematically with the whole mythology and the whole, you know, the kind of the narrative that's being painted through the mythology interacting with the lyrical content, if you can manage to parse it.
Yeah. We'll come on to that later, I think. I think it only gets more ambiguous as we go on through the catalog, which I think we'll talk about later. But,
totally.
Yeah.
Should we move on to...
I think so, yeah. Why don't we take 5?
To the self... Yeah, okay.
You and I. It won't make a difference to the podcast listeners. But yeah, we'll be back in a minute, and we're going to, I guess, focus on Bon Iver, the self-titled album, with maybe a sidebar on Blood Bank.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
That came out in between at some point.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Oh, geez.
What a about face compared to the last album.
Oh, I know.
You know, I was just reading the little Wikipedia blurb about this album, and when it came out, it was considered a significant departure from their last album, which like makes sense, but it's also hilarious when you think about how far they've departed from even that sound, comparing it to I, I, which we'll get to eventually. But yeah, just a totally new sound. And it's really cool how that song kind of starts in a place very similar to Forever Ago, right? Like, it's kind of ghostly vocals and simple guitars, and then the drums kind of come in with that sort of military marching snare.
Yeah, it takes you off guard, I think.
It's just sort of like eases you in, like, okay, it's a bit different now, like, just get ready, it's things are going to change. And then, you know, and then it kind of mellows out for a second, and then it comes in full force with a full band, and it just like knocks your socks off.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it, in a way. Like, I don't think it was necessarily intentional that it turned out like, oh, we're gonna ease you in by something that feels
I was
familiar.
speaking mostly figuratively.
No, but it's a good way to put it. But like, it is the song. If you were to sort of dissect the song within itself, and not like out of the context of the rest of the catalog, even so, it stands out. That the intro, that very delicate, incredibly haunting guitar part, and that repeating quick melody line. It's so it grabs your attention so well, and the rest of the melodic content around it is just kind of like swirling. Yeah, kind of waiting in the
you know, there's almost something nautical about that song.
Yeah,
it has like these rises and falls, like these swells. And you know, I was just reflecting on the name Perth, the name of the song, which is essentially the exact other side of the world from Minnesota, where Justin Vernon's from.
By the way, quick note, we got it wrong that the cabin wasn't in Minnesota, it was in North Carolina.
Yeah, yes. That's right. Yeah.
We just have to make that quick point.
I think I did say somewhere like Minnesota or something.
Yes.
But to clarify,
those
the cabin
are quite
was
different states, though.
But Perth, Australia, is so far away from Minnesota, and like this is a departure album. The first track is like on the other side of the world. You know, I mean, this is all quite figurative thinking here.
It could be about Perth, Ontario.
That would be awesome.
Did you think about that?
I have, but I just kind of brushed it off. Thinking,
I doubt it.
Why the fuck would they write a song about Perth, Ontario? I mean, it's a beautiful town.
We've been to, well, it's okay.
Yikes. Be careful, Sean. You don't know what shooters in Perth.
Are the Perthites going to come after me?
They might.
On a
you
podcast?
Never know. You never know.
Anyway.
We'll find out, I guess.
Yes. The drums. I think we have to talk about the drums. I think that is the next thing.
Yes, really, definitely. So yeah,
it's a big difference from the first album.
There aren't really drums in the last album, right?
There's there's percussion, I guess you could say.
Right. There's something that sounds like a kick, but we were talking off air before about how the kick doesn't even really sound like a kick. Like it could just be a fist on a desk.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And there's a shaker.
It's a generic like timekeeping sound. Mm-hmm. It's not a kick drum or a snare or a tom or a hi-hat or anything specific. Mm-hmm. There's a bit of like sort of shaker that is discernible in Pharema and whatnot, but in self-titled, there's a kit, at least two.
There's actually two. Yeah, they have two drummers.
There's a lot of percussion happening and real drum sounds happening in this record.
Two percussionists, I could say, because they're not always playing kit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like that song, there's so much contrast between like the kit, the grooves go in so many different directions. Like it starts off with that very regimented military style marching snare.
Yes.
And then once the full band comes in, it does this sort of jazzy, really kind of groovy groove, you know, like the, it's very syncopated, very all over the place. And then it comes right back into the marching snare.
There are very few like straight, like regular kind of drum beats in any of the Bon Iver catalog.
Totally.
Especially on this album. Right. It's very like the drums are almost used not as like a timekeeping implement, but like
they're expressive.
That they're almost part of the melody. Like you can't really you couldn't play a lot of these songs with just a guitar and a singer.
It wouldn't
they
be
would
the
kind
same,
of require that what's the right word? They're not just timekeeping, they're parts.
Yeah.
These are written specific intentional pieces of music.
Totally.
That require that like that percussive thing that just you couldn't pull it off in the same way if these songs were to be recorded in the same way as Pharema, it would be a completely different thing.
Mm-hmm. It'd be totally different.
On the topic of the way it was recorded, we actually watched in the interim here a video about the studio that they made this record in.
April Base.
Yes, April Base, aka The Ranch. It's an incredible... There's a really good video on YouTube, by the way. Go and listen to it after you've listened to the podcast. It's on YouTube. You can watch it. It's like a 6 or 7 minute video about the studio that they built for this album and that they've used more or less ever since. And
an old ranch house about 3 miles away from where Justin and his brother grew up in Minnesota. It's kind of a cool little detail. With like an indoor pool in the basement.
Yeah.
That they converted into a full studio space and recorded their self-titled album. They recorded another great album by a band called Gangs, Gayng's, really fun, kind of groovy album.
And the Volcano
Choir album, another great band. Both of these have Justin Vernon in them, I should mention.
Yes. He's one of the most prolific artists of our sort of generation, really. He cannot be suppressed. He just always creating.
Yeah. And then or collaborating or producing for people or working with Kanye and Taylor Swift.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
We did aim to not gush too much about Justin
Right.
Vernon specifically.
Yeah.
But no, I think for me, that video of seeing sort of the intricacies and some of the details of the studio that they made this album in really helped me kind of understand the sort of the shift between the first and the second record. There are a lot of similarities in a way. I think there are probably more similarities between Forever and Bon Iver self-titled than there are between any of the other records.
Yeah, like I feel like the relationship, like Forever Forever Go is to Bon Iver what 22 A Million, their third album, is to I, their fourth album.
I guess so.
You
but
know?
I think kind of not, which is what I was getting at. I think it's almost harder to make the link between any of their other records as it is between Forever and self-titled specifically. Like, I think necessarily they can't be decoupled, like because of the genesis of the project. I think the amount of people and the amount of time that had elapsed between the creation of self-titled and I, like they don't put out music frequently.
No, it's very unfortunate.
So yes, but it is a shame. But the thing is, the music that they do put out is so potent that you can get years
it's
of
worth the
enjoyment
wait. Yeah.
out of it. We're still listening. I mean, we're talking about this in 2024. So obviously they're doing something right. What was I going to say though? I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, no, I think there's a lot that we can chat about with the latter two albums at a later date that will make more sense in that context than Forever and Bon Iver specifically.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, obviously there's a little bit less, it's hard to sort of pin it down, but the production is different. There's more synth and sort of, I guess you could say, post-production kind of stuff on the latter two albums than happened in...
They get a little more experimental.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can even hear it in what we listened to at Perth. Like, it's obviously something of an upgrade technologically from Forever, but it's still a very mellow sounding recording. It's not hi-fi. It's not like full spectrum, perfectly produced and mastered kind of material. It's still very sort of down to earth.
In the background, you can hear, the drummers fumbling with sticks, or like there's a bit of messiness that really gives that album character, the self-titled album, some character that I also think links it to the first album in a really interesting and rewarding way.
Absolutely. Now we debated quite a bit about what other songs we were going to listen to on this record. We're not going to listen to one right away, but I think we can at least give a few honorable mentions to some songs that we chatted about and are worth chatting about here that we won't play. One, for some reason, I've always been really drawn to Towers.
Yeah.
I love that song because as a songwriter myself and somebody who's generally kind of pulled more towards pop music in general, I find like that song just hits all of the chords for me. No pun intended. Like it just hits all of the notes that I want. Like it's not to say it's accessible or anything like that, but
no, it is one of the more accessible songs, I'd say.
Like, yeah, well, I guess it's more conventional in its structure, because one of the things that is unique about a lot of Bon Iver songs is they don't have like verses, choruses, bridges, like all of these kind of noticeable parts. Many of them don't even have a chorus, which is really bizarre in this day and age and in sort of modern music generally. So that's something to note. But Towers, and even Towers doesn't necessarily even have like a a chorus. It has parts that change and repeat, but even when they do, the lyrics change. Like there's never like or rarely a repeating vocal bit that is
there's a word
constant.
For it. I think it's used in musical theater. I'm thinking theme.
Refrain or something like that.
Yeah.
I should know all these technical terms,
Yeah.
but well, I shouldn't. I didn't go to school for it. I just,
hold yourself to a high standard.
Yeah, I wish I knew these things.
Yeah,
Then I'd be a nerd. Shall we listen to something then?
I was just trying to think of something witty to say, but basically it boils down to Sean, you are a nerd. Accept it.
Well, we all know that.
All right, next song.
We're not going to listen to Towers, though. I just wanted to give a shout out to it because
actually, while we're at
it's a brilliant song.
I'll give a shout out to one of my favorites on the album, Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
There's two versions of this song, two main versions. The album version, which is a fantastic, groovy, banger, rocky, great fun song. And then there's a really stripped back acoustic version that he did at the Sydney Opera House as part of this kind of big showcase.
We listened to that before we started recording.
And it's so hauntingly beautiful.
It's incredible.
The studio version, the album version, he sings in his, the conventional, the expected Bon Iver falsetto. In the stripped back acoustic Australia version, he uses his like bass, his tenor voice, his chest
very
voice.
Low. It's very low, soft, like close to the mic, kind of like.
And it's just like
thing. Yeah.
It's
haunting.
It's really hauntingly beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I go back to that track weekly. I love it.
Is that what we're listening to? Or?
No, I think we should do Holocene.
Yes.
Sean mentioned that this was the song that apparently I introduced him to Bon Iver with.
It is certainly possible and probably likely that I'd have heard some of Forever before this.
Well, yeah, like Skinny
happened.
Love, which we surprisingly haven't mentioned yet.
My older brother, for all of his faults. No, I'm just kidding. I love you, Connor. He actually, I remember him really gravitating towards Skinny Love at one point. Now, I can't pinpoint whether that was before or after I became aware of Bon Iver, but the point at which I distinctly remember thinking, oh, this is someone to watch. It was Holocene, and I was at Lucas's parents' place in Sydenham, Ontario, and he showed me the video for Holocene, and it's
a beautiful video, by the way.
Honestly. When we witnessed and listened to and experienced this at the concert in 2019, I nearly wept.
Oh, it was a spiritual experience.
Yes,
religious.
It was difficult to contain.
And it was at the I don't know what it's not the Air Canada Centre anymore, right?
No, what is it? Scotiabank Arena, I think it's called now.
And it's a big place.
Yeah.
It was fully packed. And for that song, everybody brought out their phone flashlights.
Yes.
As the equivalent to the lighter. And I think this is a fairly standard thing, but it was the first time I'd experienced it, and it was unreal to see how
they
much
shut off
light.
all the stage lights, and then
it was like as if the house lights were on.
It's amazing.
It was unreal, so bright, and that was really cool. To look out at the sea of, cell phone stars with the best soundtrack possible.
It works really well.
Yeah, it was great.
Anyway, all right, let's do it then. Holocene.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Another song that makes me tempts me to weep.
It doesn't just tempt me.
We were talking about that song that song makes me want to weep too.
Yes. I've probably zoned out in intense feeling and emotion to that song more than almost any other song in my catalog that I would listen to. Just the amount of times that song has touched me in my life. No pun intended. It's incredible. It's an amazing piece of music.
Mm-hmm.
It's symphonic. It doesn't feel like the kind of song that you it doesn't to call it it's an indie song or it's like a folk song or something.
It's just
none of that actually.
It's a masterpiece.
Yeah, it doesn't do it justice to call that. It is a true masterpiece, and it is singular. I think it's a generational kind of a song.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Among many,
Yeah.
we are privileged to live at a time where there's a lot of incredible music.
No shortage.
I would put that one at near the peak, if not at the peak, for me.
Yeah, I have so many great memories with this whole album, but that song in particular, like which is so great because it's a song I think really about memory. And this like this album was the first album that I really dove deep into with Bon Iver. I think Holocene may have been the song that brought me into contact with Bon Iver first. Either that, maybe might have been Skinny Love, but this was the first, well, I think maybe the first vinyl I ever bought for myself, like new vinyl. I bought thrifted vinyl or like, you know, secondhand vinyl, vintage stuff all the time. But I think this was the first new pressing I ever bought for myself.
Well, this would have been at the beginning of the vinyl revival. Like,
totally. Yeah.
You'd be hard pressed to find vinyl
I think I was 16 or 17, you know, it was the perfect time for a good band like this to kind of take over my life. You know, I just got my license, was driving friends all around or going into town, driving around the countryside, and
I got my first job and I would listen to this album on repeat both ways, biking back and forth from my job at a grocery store. Like it was about a 20-minute bike ride either way. Yeah. And it was like get on, click on Perth and listen to their album all the way there and all the way back.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember driving around at night in the countryside, playing the song as loud as my shitty little Honda Accord speakers could play it, and just belting it out with friends in the middle of the night, driving around back roads. Great, great memories. Such a good song.
Yeah. It's one of those songs, like, I almost don't want to put it under the microscope in terms of like the details and things. Like that there are so, like you could probably do a dissertation on this song alone. Yeah. But I'm a little hesitant to go too far under the microscope, just because it's the sum of its parts. Like the drumming, for one thing, is it's incredible. Like it's so unique. It's they have two drummers famously. I mean, Bon Iver, like every time they play live, they've got two drum sets, kind of like Grateful Dead or whatever. But they're always playing off of each other so perfectly. They're doing specific parts. They're filling in bits that the other one can't.
It's like an orchestra arrangement, you know?
Yeah, and in this song, it's exemplified because of the way that they've panned it between the left and the right speaker. Like you get that little, it almost sounds like a slapback delay, like an effect. But it goes between the two.
It's all analog. It's all just two people playing.
It's very light on the digital production, really. Like you get the sense, especially when you see the studio that they were working in. And again, I come back to, if you haven't yet watched the video of the studio that they were working in, watch it. It's very analog and down to earth the way that they recorded a lot of this stuff. It was not effects heavy or overly produced. And I think that's just a testament to the songwriting and the synergy between the artists in the room. Like you can't just get anybody together with a loose idea in any old room and come out with something like that. You have to have an incredible amount of charisma between players and understanding and a feeling that you're trying to achieve. Like in order to do something like that. It's very rare.
Yeah. The feeling I get from that song is, I mean, there's the one line, I think. This song, one of the few songs that kind of has a chorus, right?
Yes, it does. And that's actually, that's a good point too.
And one of the lines in the chorus is jagged, vacant, thick with ice. And that just, to me, sums the song up sums the song up so well.
Yeah.
There are jagged elements, there's vacant elements, and there's icy, thick. I don't know. It's like, we just had a bunch of freezing rain here the last couple days, and
a bunch. Fuck. I had to clean my car off 6 times of freezing rain in the last 24 hours. I had to scrape like a 1/4 inch of ice off of my car 6 times.
Yeah.
You go inside for 2-3 hours and come back out to your car, it's covered again. And it sucks.
Yeah, it's frustrating, but there's such a beauty after a freezing rain, right? Like everything's crusted.
If you have the prescience and the patience to look up and see it on the branches.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's
and that's just
beautiful.
that image and this song are just paired in my mind perfectly.
Yeah. So, I can't remember where I heard this, but I did hear Justin Vernon talking about how this song kind of came out of like a walk that he had with his
brother. Yeah. I think they
it was around Christmas
smoked a joint.
time. Yeah,
around
they just
Christmas
went
time
for like a spirit walk, and it was cold and still, and
they walked over an overpass and looked over a highway that was thick with ice.
Yeah.
And I guess that image stuck in his mind, and he wrote a song about it. Yeah, miles. Actually, it's a good opportunity for a segue there. Because I think in this album we really start to see some of Justin Vernon's influences shine through, right? Like his influences being his upbringing in Wisconsin, his family, and also growing up, in the 80s and listening to Bruce Hornsby and blanking other 80s musicians.
This is a part of the Bon Iver mythos that I am less familiar with. So,
yeah, there's one great medley of Bonnie Raitt. That's who I was thinking of.
Right.
Bonnie Raitt. One great medley Justin Vernon does. It's on YouTube of him singing a medley of "Can't Make You Love Me" and "Nick of Time."
Oh yeah. Wait, on YouTube?
Yeah.
Oh fuck yeah. That's a great one.
It's
on the
so
piano,
good.
right? It's just him with it's not a grand piano, but like I don't know what you call that. A semi. But what do you call that type of piano? It's not like a grand, but it's like
upright.
Yeah, is that what it's called? I don't know.
An upright.
Your dad has.
Yeah, he has
like
one.
that.
I think it's just an upright or an upright, like a I think you'd call it an upright.
I really should know these things.
But yeah, he does a Bonnie Raitt medley of "Can't Make You Love Me" and "Just in the
It's
Nick
amazing.
of Time." It's so good. And like and on some of his newer stuff, he's worked with Bruce Hornsby fairly often now, at least on 2 songs, I think. One of his songs on I, was an old demo. Well, I mean, we can get to the story in more detail when we get there, but he was hanging out with Bruce Hornsby, and Hornsby was showing him old demos he had, and Justin Vernon was like, "Oh, I like that one," and Hornsby was like, "Oh, I couldn't do anything with it. Have it," and it became this great song on their latest album.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, but
that's
awesome. You really get a sense for the 80s influence beginning on this album, especially in the song we're going to play next.
Yes. That's a brilliant segue, by the way.
Thank you.
This is the thing I've noticed this is, well, the 3rd podcast that I've recorded of this series. I think we might put this one out as the 2nd, but regardless, I am very thankful that my compatriots on the other side of the mic have been very good at keeping things on topic, because I go way out of left field sometimes, and they just remind me that, oh yeah, we have some things we have to do.
We had a plan,
segues we have to make, and we're gonna listen to some songs.
All right,
That's
so
perfect.
this is Beth/Rest off of
I love this
the
song.
self-titled Bon Iver album.
Amazing. This is a great place to end it too. Just for the sake of the listeners, Lucas and I didn't have a fully planned out sort of scheme here for this Bon Iver podcast, though we thought we might hit a bit of everything. I think we're going to probably split this up into a couple of episodes because it just deserves it, to be honest. So we'll probably wrap it up after this, and we'll come back
we'll be back
for 22 a million and I, and a little bit of extra here and there. We might even do a whole other podcast on the
on collabs, EPs,
the extra
singles,
stuff, yeah. Volcano Choir and Big Red Machine, stuff like that.
Oh, Big Red Machine.
Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna wrap this up here with Beth Rest. I think this is a perfect thing to end on, honestly.
Yeah, and I hope you're listening to this before bed, because this song is great to put.
If you have listened to this entire thing, first of all, thank you. We have given you very little reason to listen to us mumble on about this stuff for, what is it, an hour or so? God, I don't even know.
Yeah.
But thank you, and please, if you haven't yet, dive into the Bon Iver catalog and thank us later. This is Beth Rest from Bon Iver. Bon Iver. Thank you so very much for checking out this episode of Vinyl Safari. I hope you enjoyed Lucas and I just waffling on about our love for Bon Iver for the better part of an hour. If you did, please give the podcast a like, a follow, a subscribe. You can leave a comment on Spotify as well. Tell us what you thought about the episode. Or on YouTube. It makes a big difference. It helps us to know what you like, what you didn't like, what we can improve on, and just generally, we'd like to know your thoughts. So share the podcast around. We have lots of new and exciting stuff coming up for you, including new guests that we're going to interview, new interesting topics all about music. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you on the next Vinyl Safari.